Let's talk about freedom. What if real freedom wasn't about having no rules, but about being set free from the whole idea of rule following itself? Okay, so we're going to dive into one of the most passionate, most revolutionary documents ever written, an ancient letter to a group called the Galatians. And let me tell you, it's a fiery, urgent defense of what it means to be truly free. And this letter, wow, it doesn't waste any time with a gentle hello. It kicks off with pure shock and disbelief. The author, Paul, is basically saying, I am floored. How could you possibly walk away from the message of pure grace so fast and chase after something else? You see, this isn't just an argument, it's an intervention. So, what was the big deal? What was this crisis? Well, a group of new teachers had shown up in this region, Galatia, and they were telling all these new believers, hey, your faith, it's not quite enough. They argued that to be truly right with God, you had to add this whole checklist of ancient rules and rituals, and the big one was circumcision. They were turning a message of total freedom into a system of religious performance. Now, for Paul to even begin to challenge these guys, he first has to establish his own credentials. I mean, who is he to make these kinds of explosive claims? So, before he can defend his message, he has to defend his right to even deliver it in the first place. And here's his core defense, and it is a huge one. Paul's authority, he says, doesn't come from any human teacher or some committee. He's basically saying, I didn't learn this in a classroom, and no apostle passed it down to me. I got this directly from the source. It is an incredibly audacious claim of direct divine revelation. And just look at this timeline. It really shows you his whole journey. He starts out as a violent enemy of this new faith. I mean, he was its biggest persecutor. Then he has this radical turnaround. But get this. Notice the timing. He's out there preaching his message for years before he even checks in with the original apostles in Jerusalem. And when he finally does, a full 14 years later, they don't correct him. Nope. They recognize his authority and they shake on it. And if you need any more proof of how committed he is to this principle, Paul tells this absolutely stunning story. So the Apostle Peter, the Peter, one of the original pillars, he comes to a town called Antioch, and he's eating freely with non-Jewish believers. No problem. But then, when a group of these rule keepers shows up, Peter gets scared and separates himself. Paul was so outraged by this hypocrisy, he called him out on it publicly, to his face, for betraying the gospel. And that whole confrontation, that whole story, it's the perfect setup for the real heart of the letter. The massive, fundamental difference between a life based on faith and a life based on following the law. This right here, this is basically Paul's entire thesis. The word justified is just a fancy way of saying being made right with God. And Paul's declaration is that this doesn't happen by ticking boxes off a checklist, the works of the law. It happens through faith, through simply trusting. And he closes with this emphatic statement: rule following will never, ever, ever make a person right with God. So that begs the question, right? If the law can't save you, what was it even for? Well, Paul uses this brilliant metaphor. He says the law was like a schoolmaster, or think of it like a guardian for a child. Its job was to protect and guide us, but only for a time. Once faith has come, we're not kids under a tutor anymore. We're grown-up sons and heirs with a direct line to the Father. So the choice he's laying out couldn't be more stark. It's totally black and white. On one side, you've got the law. Paul says it leads to a curse, because, let's be honest, nobody can keep it perfectly. It's a system of bondage. But on the other side, you've got faith. And that brings blessing, freedom, and the full status of being a child of God. He's asking the Galatians, and us, which reality do you want to live in? And to really hammer this point home, to make it stick, he switches from abstract logic to a powerful story. It's a story everyone listening would have known by heart. He uses this allegory from the life of Abraham to make its argument absolutely unforgettable. So, the story is about Abraham's two sons. One son, born to Hagar the servant, represents the covenant of law, a relationship built on works and bondage. But the other son, born to Sarah, the free woman, was a child of promise. Paul's point is just so sharp and clear. You guys who want to live under the law are choosing to be children of the slave. We who live by faith are children of the free. And this is the thunderous conclusion to that whole story. It's a direct command. He's saying, Christ has set you free, so stand firm in it.
Don't you dare willingly put that heavy yoke of slavery, of trying to earn your way to God, back on your own necks.
Now, this brings up a really crucial question, doesn't it? If we're free from the law, what guides our behavior? Does freedom just mean we can do whatever we want? Paul totally anticipates this question, and he shifts from theology to the real practical ethics of what this new life actually looks like.
Paul makes it crystal clear, this is not a free-for-all. This freedom is not an excuse for self-indulgence. In fact, he says, this freedom is meant for one primary thing, to serve one another through love. He argues that the entire point of the law is actually summed up in this one simple command: love your neighbor as yourself.
When you misuse this freedom for selfish reasons, what Paul calls living by the flesh, our self-centered nature, this is what you get. It's a life of conflict, division, and just destruction. Hatred, strife, envy. It's the natural result of a life that's centered only on the self.
But when a person lives in true freedom, guided by God's Spirit, the result is completely different. And I love this part. Notice he calls it fruit, not works. This isn't something you achieve by just trying harder to be good. It's something that grows naturally out of a life that's connected to the right source. Things like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. These are the real signs of authentic freedom.
And the implications of this are world-changing. Seriously, this freedom isn't just some internal feeling. It completely demolishes the external walls that divide people. In this new reality, the most fundamental social divisions of the ancient world, your religious background, your economic status, your gender, they're all irrelevant. All are one. So Paul brings his entire passionate argument down to this one final point. That whole debate that kicked us off, circumcision, means nothing. Zero. What matters isn't some external ritual or some mark on your body. The only thing that counts is the internal transformation, becoming a completely new creature. And in the end, this ancient letter leaves all of us with a timeless and deeply personal question. It challenges us to look at our own lives, our own beliefs, and to ask, are we living in the liberty of a child of promise, or have we somehow gotten tangled up again in a yoke of bondage? What does it really, truly mean to be free?